Alright, time to do map review. Let's check out some of the most interesting maps and the maps that you least expect exist. Percentage of Hispanic children in the United States. I cannot believe there's that many Hispanic children. More than 50% of the children born in California, Texas, and Nevada. So many Hispanic born children. But that makes sense because these used to be provinces of Mexico, right? That broke away and the US just snatched them. Snatched the provinces from the Mexicans, illegally stealing that territory, and now 100 years later, the descendants of those Mexicans are still the majority of the population. So this is a cultural win for the Mexican people. Viva la Mexico. And Cinco de Mayo, right? Because everybody knows Mexicans celebrate Cinco de Mayo. They don't, okay? Nobody does it's not the National Day of Mexico, you freaking assholes. Cinco de Mayo, the 5th of May, is just a day celebrating when they won a battle against the French, when the French invaded Mexico. It's like such an irrelevant date. I don't know how it even became popular in the US. It's insane for me. The fertility rate in the Russian Federation, boys. Totally high amounts of fertility. Look at that. There's more people born in Siberia and the Asian parts of Russia than the actual European parts of Russia. Does not surprise me because these people have more freedom in the western parts. Am I right? Especially the ones by the border with China, right? They got a better economic outlook. Surprised about this little bit here. Is this like Chechnya or something? Are they making a lot of babies? And why is this the highest fertility rate? This is like in the middle of the Arctic, isn't it? It's like super cold in here. Isn't this like Arkhangelsk or some shit? Sex is cheaper than central heating. That makes sense. So that's why so many babies in Siberia. They do the pee-pee time so they don't die from frost. There's a bit of a different one here. So this is percentage of electricity generated from green sources. 25% renewable and 3% nuclear in India. 67% renewable in the European Union. Woo woo, go Europe. And 34 as well as 41% in China and the US. Considering US has the biggest economy in the world, they should be upping their game and improving their renewable energy. Like, they're really not doing that. That's pretty bad, not gonna lie. That's actually pretty bad. I would have expected the US to be leading in renewable energy, but they're one of the last countries. What the schnapps is this, boys? I think Romania is carrying all of Europe here with the nuclear power plant. And France has a lot of nuclear power plants as well. Honey production around the world. Oh, snaps. Look at all that honey in Europe, boys. Surprisingly, China's the biggest producer of honey. And one of the smallest producers is Japan. Wow. There's no honey production in Botswana for some reason, or maybe it's just not on the map. China's massive production of honey. Must be because they're communists, so they must have like specific places meant for honey production, I guess. Hunger map 2022. Chronic hunger. If current trends continue, the hunger will reach 840 million by 2030. Chad and Madagascar have the highest amounts of hunger. That is horrible, man. I never expected that. When you name your country Chad, you would imagine that things are getting a little bit better, right? And Venezuela's over 25%. Holy snaps. Bolivia too. And Haiti. Actually, Haiti's above 35%. You know what? Did not expect this. Or East Timor, for that matter, also is 25. And North Korea, that I did expect. China's gross domestic product by region in 2022. Holy mother of God. Look at that. Guangdong, Jiangsu, and other provinces here are way better off than the rest. Like, look at the difference. 11,000 yen compared to 190 yen in Tibet. What? That is massive difference. So most of the Chinese economy comes from this area. Who would have expected this? Okay, all memes aside though, I was expecting this because I used to travel to China a lot. And I do know there's a few cities by the coastline here that are really massive industrial places. For example, there's the city of Shenzhen, which is in Guangdong. Shenzhen is the biggest producer of electronics in the world. It's literally a massive city filled up with factories and with just a massive output of electronic stuff. This place here, it's right next to Hong Kong. It's kind of tactically right next to Hong Kong. Before Hong Kong was annexed by China, they were doing a lot of trade with the English because they had Hong Kong there, right? And that's why Shenzhen developed into the massive industrial industrial city that it is today, simply because of Hong Kong. It's not the only one. Hangzhou and Guangzhou, also Guangzhou here is a massive industrial city in China, and Guangzhou and Shanghai, of course, also obviously. And then also Chongqing is a massive city with a lot of economy, but it's not as big as the other ones by the coastline. Inland, Chongqing and a little bit Chengdu, at least from a touristic perspective, these cities are very important as well. This is a massive city, Chongqing. It's actually its own district, I believe. And Chengdu is a great city. You guys should definitely check it out if you ever visit China. Oh, this is a bit of a controversial map, isn't it? Percentage of European black population. There is a clear distinction between Western Europe and Eastern Europe. What does this tell us, chat? Ukraine, Belarus, and the Serbian countries here have the lowest amount, followed by Russia, Slovakia, Romania, Poland. Does this tell us that these countries are so bad to live in that even African people don't want to immigrate here? As a Romanian, I kind of understand why they never came to us. But I also have to say, obviously the West has a lot more black population because they were colonial empires, right? So they had a lot of people from the colonies immigrate here. Like France had most of Africa at one point, or half of Africa, right? As did the UK, so makes sense. Surprised that Sweden's got 3%. That is a lot for Sweden. Did not expect them to have that many because they never had a colonial empire. So clearly, black people here immigrated because it's a great country. Now we got countries by GDP per capita. Luxembourg is number 1, followed by Ireland. What? No freaking way. And then Norway is 3rd, and the last countries are Burundi, South Sudan, and Madagascar. Burundi's the poorest country. You know, this is really important to see because Burundi is right next to the richest economy in Africa. Well, not the richest right now, but one of the most up-and-coming economies. So this is Burundi, right? It's a very poor country. Apparently, it's the poorest country in Africa, according to GDP phenomena at least. But Rwanda is completely the opposite. Rwanda, with its capital in Kigali, is one of the most up-and-coming places in Africa, together with Nigeria. Rwanda is amazing, guys. Like, they've really developed this country massively. Look at this. They've got better roads, better infrastructure, better everything than my country, Romania, has. This is actually, look at how beautiful this is, man. They have irrigation going through the public streets here, man, for water and stuff. And then if you go to their neighbor in Burundi, it's the opposite. Look at the difference here. This is Burundi. Literally their neighbor. Why is that? Is it because it's an African country? No. The other one's an African country too. It's because of the mentality of the people and because of the way that the government uses the money that they have. Instead of wasting it and putting it in their pockets because of corruption, like in certain countries, they actually use it towards the benefit of the entire country. Alright, so this is a hurricane map. I never realized that some of them start off so close to the European parts. Wow, they start in the European areas, close to it anyway, that part of the Atlantic, and they go all the way into the Americas and the south part of the United States, most of the Caribbean, and parts of Mexico. Countries carried by Republican presidents in the year 2000. Republicans won in most of the places in the US in 2000. That is massive. I would not have expected that. Or maybe I'm just not seeing facts here. Maybe the blue dots is where the high population concentration, where most of the population is concentrated. That would make sense because normally Republicans are associated with the countryside, with the rural people, right? Whilst the Democrats are in the cities and the more densely populated places, right? Even though it's a lot less blue on the map, the blue is where all the population is. So it probably was close to 50-50. Normally throughout United States presidential election history, most of the times it was very close. Maybe a 5 to maximum 10% difference. Polish Americans. Oh my god, look at the amount of Polish Americans in the US, guys. I never expected there's this many of them. Percentage of population, up to 33% of the population in the northeast part of the US. Like a lot of the Missouri, Minnesota, New York, Pennsylvania. Wow, so many Polish immigrants. Arab Americans in the United States. All right, let's see. This is getting juicy here. I did have a strong suspicion that the Arab Americans are going to be concentrated in California because most of the Arab Americans that immigrate to the US have immigrated in recent years. Like the Polish people that we saw before, they immigrated in the 40s, the 30s, the 20s, after as well, of course, but a lot of them in the early 1900s. Arabs immigrated in the late 1900s as well as in the early early 2000s. And whenever you immigrate to another country, obviously you're going to go to the places where there's the highest amounts of jobs, the highest amounts of possibilities for growth, for development. And that obviously is California, Florida, and the northeast of the United States. And that's exactly where the Arabs are mostly concentrated in on this map. So it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Percentage of Norwegians. This does not surprise me at all. Most of the northern parts, especially the northern part of the Midwest United States, has a lot of Norwegian ancestry. This is a very known fact. That's why a lot of people in this area are actually blondish with blue eyes. I think there's a lot of Swedish as well, Danish and Germanics in the same exact area here. I am surprised though to see that above 38% all the way to 64% in this particular area. I'm guessing something must have happened at one point in Norway in the 1700s or 1800s, because that's when this area was settled, right? Like the mid 1800s to late 1800s is when this exact area was predominantly settled. Maybe it was hunting for pelts, because Norwegians were very renowned for hunting pelts in Europe, and when the European beaver was depleted, most of the pelt hunting happened in this area of the United States as well as most of Canada. So they probably settled here because they were pelt hunting. There was famine. Oh, there you go. There was a famine in Norway. That explains it. All the time when there's a famine, people leave. Like, why do you think New York and Boston and this particular area here has so many Irish immigrants? It happened because Irish people were starving because of the Irish potato blight. A lot of Irish people had no choice. They had to immigrate to the US, and at the time, the area where they mostly immigrated to was the New England area. The mandatory Palestine, which was at the time a part of the British Empire, Jewish-owned land, state land conceded to the Jews, Arab-owned land, state land conceded to the Arabs, unsettled land, and unregistered. Did not expect to be this little Jewish land compared to how much there is today. Something happened in these 70-something years, right? 80 years, that the Jewish land grew so much. I guess a lot of immigrants came from Europe after the war. A lot of immigrants must have come over, settled these areas. What happened to the Arabs, though, if all those Jewish people came and took this land? That's an interesting question, isn't it, chat? What do you guys think? German map after the war. So this is what happened to Germany after the war. They lost the eastern parts, half taken here by the Russians, the Soviet Union, the other majority, not half, a lot of it taken by Poland. And then the West Germany was divided into 3 districts. We have the American part. Somehow Americans also got Bremenhaven, the British part, and the French part. Let's check Churchill's plan for a new European map. What the schnapps is this, guys? Churchill wanted to unify Austria with Hungary with Bavaria, and then you have Saxony separate, Hanover, Hesse or something, and you have like Brandenburg, Prussian area. That's a weird looking map for Germany right there. Really weird looking map, not gonna lie. Kind of tells me that Churchill wasn't great with maps somehow. Surprised how Churchill actually wanted to keep Romania intact. What? Okay, is this accurate? I cannot verify if this is true or not. It looks horrible. I'm glad this wasn't implemented. Territory still held by the Nazis at the end of the war. Whoa, they had most of Norway. They had the Courland pocket. I know about that. They had Denmark. They had parts of the Netherlands. They had most of the Bohemian lands and a lot of Austria as well. The mountain area. It doesn't surprise me because it's pretty hard to go through the mountain areas, I guess. So the Germans pretty much had a really great defense in the Alps, I guess, holding back the allies from coming in from Italy. Whilst the main German area was easy to take since there wasn't much of a defense in the first place. There was a big defense facing the Soviets though. And even Crete and Dodecanese were held by the Germans and the Italians. Very, very interesting. It's very surprising, actually. Oh, this is super interesting. Literacy rate in Albania in 1945. Average national literacy was 23%. 1 in 4, well, I guess it depends on the region. In the north, 1 in 5. In the south, 1 in 4 people read and understood how to read and write. Wow, that's horrible. When you think about it, this is all the fault of the Turks. The people that were alive in 1945 in Albania were the same people that were born, well, most of them were the people that were born during Ottoman times. The Turks didn't do a good job at educating people, did they? Hope you guys enjoyed this quick map review. If you did, don't forget to subscribe and give me all your money. I'm kidding, I already took it. It's here. Cannot get it back.